Welcome to the J&J Sip and Say. Jill, how's it going this evening?
It's going.
So this is our 20th episode already. Yes.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it is.
I didn't know that.
So we've got impeachment going on. We've got the Iowa caucuses going on. We have the Super Bowl, the State of the Unions tomorrow. Let's talk about dogs.
I'm down.
Let's talk about something a little more lighthearted. And surprisingly, we haven't talked about dogs or as far as a spotlight episode yet, even though you're the biggest dog person I know.
No, that's pretty surprising that we haven't talked about that yet.
Well, let's do it tonight. Obviously, we do have a dog. We have Louie, and he was a rescue dog.
His middle name is Bernard. Jake always tends to forget that part.
We never use Bernard.
I do sometimes.
If he's in trouble.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. You were adamant when we bought our home, and we're fortunate we live on a couple acres out in the country. You were adamant about adopting a dog, and I was with it. I never adopted a dog or had a rescue dog, but I agreed with you. What was your reasoning for wanting to rescue a dog so bad?
Because there's plenty, and I mean plenty, of dogs out there that need homes, and they're just sitting at a shelter waiting for someone to adopt them. I'd rather support a shelter and adopt a dog than a breeder that's going to make a couple $100 off of me buying their puppy. I didn't want a puppy. I love puppies.
I think that's a huge part of it. Yeah, puppies are great. They're kind of like babies if you can give them back after a couple hours.
Puppies might be, I can't believe I'm going to say this because everyone knows I love puppies. They might be worse than babies.
Well, they're mobile from day one.
They're mobile and they have teeth.
They have teeth. They have pretty sharp paws at that point. And those puppy teeth are really sharp.
Yes.
And they like to chew.
They're not sleeping through the night either like Mr. Blair did. They're chewing on everything. They're biting you.
They're not wearing diapers.
No. You have to teach them from a very early age.
Did you have any adoption or rescue dogs when you were growing up?
No, surprisingly.
What dogs did you have growing up?
Well, our first dog, Corky. Funny story. It was Corky's mom was my aunt and uncle's dog. And my older sister, I think she was maybe 2 at the time. They were at her house, and Aaron accidentally let the dog out, and she wasn't supposed to go out in the front. And I don't know the whole story, if they found her somewhere, if she came back, and she wasn't spayed. And my uncle said, if that dog ends up pregnant, you're taking one of the puppies. And my parents took one of them. So
you end up with a puppy. That was before you were born then.
Yeah. And he was always an outdoor dog. I mean, if it got like super cold, they would bring him in. But he was always an outside dog in our backyard, and he had his own little dog house underneath the awning in our backyard. And he became an indoor dog the older he got. He did live to be 18 and a half.
Did your parents soften their view on the dog a little bit as they got older?
I guess a little bit. I mean, he was just getting old, and I don't know, probably the last 4 or 5 years of his life, he was mainly an indoor dog.
Nothing wrong with that.
And then shortly after that, less than a year, my mom fell in love with some Shih Tzu puppies and got one of those. So I guess both times they got a puppy.
So how'd you end up with Boomer, your second dog?
I think it was just a family friend had gotten one of Boomer's brothers maybe. So I don't know. My mom just kind of fell in love with that brother, and then the breeder had another one. So they got Boomer.
How old were you when you got Boomer?
Junior year of high school. Because Corky was 3 years older than me. So I had him up until sophomore year of high school.
18 years is a long time.
He was 18 and a half. He died Christmas night. It was awful.
Yeah, it's pretty tough, but at least he was 18.
True. We knew it was coming sooner or later.
Boomer lived quite a while too, didn't
Boomer was 15 and a half. Oh, wait. He was just shy of 15,
Shy of
maybe.
15.
I think so. Yeah.
he? Yeah, we didn't have any rescue dogs growing up. My dad actually helped train canine dogs in the area back in the late 80s, early 90s. So we always had canines. We always had shepherds, two shepherds that I remember, and then when I was real little, they had female Doberman pincher, and so I was always around big like canine type dogs, purebred type dogs like that. But which
I
were
had a mutt and a Shih Tzu.
yeah, I love German shepherds, and I really do. I know this episode's about adopting dogs. I would like to have a purebred shepherd pup, but I think when we got Louie in 2015, we were both working. We weren't home a lot, so it wouldn't have been fair to have a puppy at that time. And I think that's something a lot of people don't consider is their lifestyle and what kind of dog you get.
Right, like a puppy can't go 8 hours without
No, they
being
need to
let
be
out.
out.
And when my parents got, obviously when they had Corky, like my mom, I wasn't even around yet. My mom was still staying at home. And then when they got Boomer, Dad was working second shift, if not third shift. So he was home during the day while my mom was working, and then
Vice
vice
versa.
versa.
Yeah, I think it's so important. When we got our first shepherd that when I was born was Bear. I think he was like a year old when my parents got him, but was staying at home at the time, so he even though he wasn't a puppy, there was always someone home. And then when we got Blade, our second shepherd, mom was staying at home, and of course I was like 10 when we got him, so we never had to leave our puppies, for an extended period of time, more than a few hours. So that's really important if you're going to consider getting a puppy or maybe adopting an older dog, a couple years old. What's your lifestyle like?
Well, I think that's where people struggle. They don't do their research. And I felt like with Louie, I did my research.
You did an excellent job of researching a dog that would fit our lifestyle.
Right. People just make these knee-jerk reactions. They say like, oh, well, I know my mom did with the Shih Tzu puppies.
But she was staying at home. Or
What?
she wasn't staying home. They had like the
An
day
arrangement,
covered.
yes.
Yeah.
But I feel like people are like, oh, I just really want a puppy. And then like the next day they just go out and spend like $800 on a puppy. And I'm like, okay. That's a big lifestyle change. And I don't think people realize that when they get one.
Yeah, and every dog, especially kind of dog breeds, have a personality or traits that fit good for some families and not good
Right.
for
And
others.
if you're buying a purebred from a breeder and you know nothing about that breed, what are you what are you doing?
Right. I love canine dogs. I love Belgian Malinois. They are incredible dogs, heroic. They're not the best family dog. They're so high strung.
They need to be worked.
They need to be worked. And in our lifestyle, it wouldn't be fair to the dog. Even though I'd really like to have one, it would be ridiculous to have one in our setting. So we lived in a duplex we lived in that duplex 3 years.
3, yeah.
And I knew you were really, really wanting a dog. It was kind of the first thing when we were going to buy a house that you wanted was a dog, and you were 100% on you wanted to adopt. So we got moved in our house in May, and August came around, and we had done a couple road trips, and we knew we had a stretch we were going to be at home for a while.
Well, that's the thing. We didn't jump right into it. We knew we were going to be gone for part of that summer.
Yeah,
I don't want to get a dog, and then 2 weeks later I have to leave it for 5 days.
Right, yeah, because we did a road trip to Gettysburg, and then we did a road trip to Nashville, all in a couple months. So we knew we wanted to wait because we didn't, like I said, adopt a dog, reading this dog in our home, and then take him somewhere else. That's just, not really fair to the dog.
No.
But in that time, you were doing your research. What all were you researching when you were looking to adopt a dog?
Well, I wanted a dog that came from one of the prison programs where the inmates train them. And my sister and brother-in-law, their dog, Bo, who just passed away last year, they had gotten him from a prison in...
Was it Lebanon?
It was London.
London?
It was just west of Columbus, Ohio. And, he was an awesome dog. Couldn't have asked for anything better. And I know several other people that have, maybe not that specific prison, but they've gotten a dog that's gone through the same type of program. So that's something that was kind of on my prerequisite list. So I did my research on where around here does that. And there's a shelter in Anderson. It's called the Animal Protection League. And they have a program with the Pendleton Prison, which is, like we were saying, it's big boy prison.
That's scary murder prison. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's,
big boy prison.
Yeah.
And granted, Louie was in the kind of minimum security area. But anyways, so they had a program like that. And so I got on their website, just doing my research, and I started looking at their dogs, because the days of having to go to the shelter and walk up and down the rows until you find a dog that looks cute, you don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, I feel like I'm trying to be pretty emotionless. I try to be very think with my head, but to go to a shelter and walk through and look at dogs and just pick one out, that's brutal.
Yeah, I don't. So note to self, you don't have to do that anymore.
Use the internet.
Yes. So I looked through a bunch of dogs, and that was one of my, because they have shelter dogs, and then they have what they are called Fido dogs. It's an acronym. I don't even remember what the acronym stands for. But the Fido dogs are the ones that they live and are trained at the prison. Some prison programs, the dogs are just brought in for training, and then they actually just live at the shelter. Louie lived in prison. So those dogs were specifically marked on the website if they were a Fido dog. And any Fido dog, they came potty trained, crate trained, and they knew 5 basic commands. So all that work and potty training, he already knew how to do all that. He already was crate trained, so he wasn't scared to be in a crate. And he knew what sit, stay, heel, shake. Is that 5? Or is that 4?
That's 4. There's one other, but the main ones to me was, sit, heel. We took him on a walk. He didn't pull. It was just, the programs are excellent.
Right.
And not just for the dog. I couldn't imagine being, granted, most people in prison have committed a crime where they need to be in prison, but they need something to, I guess, live for or make themselves better. And if they can help a dog and then help a family that wants to adopt a dog, I can't think of a better program.
Right. And so I kept looking through the dogs, and we had our own criteria. I wanted kind of a medium-sized dog. We live out in the country, so I didn't want a small dog that, coyotes could run off with. I feel like Louie doesn't look like prey to a coyote.
He can make it to the porch.
Yeah, he can make it to the porch fast enough to get away from a coyote. So I know that sounds stupid, but that was kind of one of my stipulations. I was like, I don't want a small dog.
And we live on 2 acres that is not fenced in.
And it's lined with trees on 2 sides.
So that was a consideration. We did not have a fenced in yard.
Right. So I wanted a medium-sized dog. One, so they could protect themselves more. And 2, I wanted to be able to run with them. I never took Boomer for runs. So I wanted to be able to run with the dog too. I guess that was kind of my two main ones. And obviously, we didn't have a kid at the time. We weren't pregnant. Louie's bio didn't say he was like specifically really good with kids, but it didn't say he can't be around kids. I think we've talked about that too. If they have an issue with kids, they'll write that on the bio. They'll just say, he'll do better in a home without small children or without any children. They don't do well with other dogs or cats. I mean, they test for all of that stuff.
Right, and that was one thing about the Animal Protection League in Anderson. It's ran by Malia Stringer, who the thing I appreciated most, she was very honest about the dogs that you were looking into. Because there was another dog you were really interested in.
Well, and what's funny is Louie was my second choice. It was him, and then there was another dog named, what was his name?
Is it
Rocco.
Rocco?
Rocco. And so when I emailed her, I said, I'm interested in Rocco or Luke, which was Louie's name before we adopted him. And she said she must have looked through our application and saw that we had marked, well, we don't have a fence and we don't plan on putting in a fence. So when she emailed me, she said, Rocco's very, very high strung or high energy and he'll need a fence, but Luke would be a good option. What'd she say? He's timid and shy at first, but once he's attached, he'll be your best friend. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I was a little disappointed because I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess, Rocco's.
But you actually never went and saw Rocco, so it was a lot easier to move on.
Yeah. And like you said, I appreciated that she was honest with me.
It's so important.
They don't want, well, what were we going to do if we brought Rocco home and the minute we get him out of the car, he runs off?
Yeah, and I think it would have worked out. With Louie, we got him home, and, I don't want to have a fence. I kind of like our open yard. If you do get a dog, you don't have a fence. What I did with Louie was every evening, and it takes time, I would put him on a leash, and I would walk the perimeter of our property for 15, 20 minutes, and I did that for about 2 weeks. And so he kind of knew the boundaries, and other than chasing like a squirrel once in a while into the woods, which wasn't very far, I mean, he stays on the property. But it's taking that time to establish boundaries with your dog.
Right. He knew. Because those first 2 weeks, I don't think we took him out without the leash. Because we didn't know what he would do.
Right.
We didn't know if he'd run off or chase something.
But I'd come home from work, and we would each evening, we would just walk the perimeter.
Yeah, and he pretty much knows. He'll stop. It's funny. He'll stop right where he knows the boundary is.
And that's just spending time with your dog. That's all that is. It's nothing scientific. It's nothing, like I'm some super dog person. It's
You're
just
a dog whisperer.
It's just taking time and spending time with your dog. That's all it is. So Rocco got eliminated.
Rocco got eliminated.
And then all of a sudden Louie was
So I arranged for a time to meet Luke, and we went.
I was a little nervous because Jill has a big soft heart, and I told her, I said, if we get over there and there's some signs that this dog isn't going to work for us, we can't bring home a dog that, might cause problems. And I didn't want to be the jerk that's like, oh, we can't take this dog home, but I wanted you to understand where I was coming from. And I think you did.
Oh, no, I understand that. I can't stand when people don't do their research. They get a dog, and within 2 days, it's back at the shelter because, for whatever reason. I mean, just
100 reasons, right?
Like, oh my gosh, they peed in the house. Okay, well,
Yeah.
All right. But anyway, so we went and saw. At first, we were going to go to the prison to meet Louie.
I was a little nervous about that.
But then for whatever reason, they brought him to the shelter.
Which was kind of like a blind date off the internet because Louie didn't look like his picture.
She got him out of the crate that he was in. And, and obviously he doesn't know us from Adam pretty much. And she gets him out and puts him on a lead. And I think I even said to you, I'm like, he's kind of chubby. I'm like, he doesn't look like his picture.
He didn't look like his picture. It was like someone on a dating website. Yeah. You don't look like your picture. Louie had put on a few pounds in prison because those inmates, and it's amazing, some of these guys are legit criminals, but those dogs are their world. So they spoil them. And even though they're not supposed to, I'm sure they get all kinds of chips and snacks and stuff they're not supposed to get.
Yeah, when she told us that, because what'd she say? She goes, well, he doesn't show well, and he obviously, didn't look like his picture.
Not at all.
And so they took us in this enclosure just to have us meet him. And what's super odd, because if anybody knows Louie, he's obsessed with us, especially me, I think, as his mom. And we get in this enclosure. He didn't want anything to do with us. He wanted just to sniff, because I don't think he was used to being there. He's, he had lived in the prison for like 10 months, 8 months.
Yeah, because typically the Fido dogs would live in the prison for 6 to 8 weeks, but there was some reason that Louie stayed there for like 8 months.
Well, I think a lot of them stay there.
I think just because the shelter was full,
right?
So they just stayed there,
right? They're the more,
and that's one thing when you, even though what was it, an extra $100 to get a Fido dog over a regular shelter dog?
I think so. So $100 to pay for all that training.
The benefit is, if you take a dog out of the Fido program, that takes a dog out of the shelter or out of the Fido program, out of the prison, it allows another dog from the shelter to go to the prison, and that just opens up a spot. So you're really helping two dogs if you go through the Fido program or a prison program in general.
Right. So we're in this enclosure with Louie, and he just kind of,
I think he was just excited to sniff around. And
right. Because we swear he has some hound in him. He's got a little bit of everything. But so he's just sniffing around, and he'd like kind of come up to us, and he was a little more interested in you than me, which again is odd now that we know him for however many years. But I think it's because he had been around men for so long, and only men in the prisons.
Not many women in penalty.
I think he took to you first. But yeah, we would call him over. He'd come up to us, sniff, and I mean, you being the dog whisperer, you obviously didn't see any red flags.
Yeah, the only thing I really checked for, like, I try to clap really loud or make loud noises just to make sure he wasn't super skittish with like thunder or loud banging noises. I didn't want a real skittish dog that can, freak out and cause issues.
Which he kind of is sometimes.
But not.
No, he just kind of like skitters away.
Yeah, he's not a problem. But yeah, we were in the enclosure. I thought he did great. I said, all right, let's do this. And it was funny. We went to get him in the car, and he just hopped right up in your Equinox. Like, all right, I'm going home with these people.
Yeah.
He was good on the ride home, and we got to the house, and he just sniffed around the whole house for probably an hour.
Yeah.
We fed him some dinner. He ate. We gave him a couple toys. I mean, he really just moved in so seamlessly with us.
Yeah. I mean, he was a little on edge that first night, just kind of just checking it out, I guess.
Yeah.
But I remember when we first got him home, I let him sniff around the yard, and he peed and pooped right away. I was like, all right, sweet. That's taken care of. And I noticed for the first time he pees like a girl, always has. I was like, oh, that's interesting. But that first night, we put him in a crate that night.
He didn't really whine or anything. He was pretty quiet.
Maybe like once when we first put him in there.
He was pretty chill.
And I will also recommend this. We adopted Louie on a Friday evening because we wanted, with both of us working, we wanted to make sure that we could get him home on a Friday night, have 2 whole days in our house before Monday, where we're like, okay, well, you got to be in your crate all day. So I would recommend, if you're thinking about getting a dog, look into that do it that way.
Yeah, and good shelters will arrange to meet when you're ready.
Right.
Like on a Friday afternoon.
So he stayed in his crate. He wasn't in his crate very long at night. First couple of nights, maybe.
Yeah.
And then we kind of just let him lay in his bed.
We kept the bedroom shut.
Right. And then he was in the crate during the day, I don't know, a couple weeks.
Yeah, you might have had like a half day or something, and we let him out for half a day at a time, or we'd go somewhere for a couple hours on the weekend and wouldn't
just
put him in
see
his
how
crate.
he would do.
But I think it really goes back to all the research you did. You found a dog that, we knew kind of what his temperament was going to be. You had done a lot of research on, hey, start him in the crate, do this, do that. And like I said, it just goes back to the work you had done before. Right,
and really the only thing Louie does, He chews, but he chews on his own bed. He's never chewed on our shoes.
Periodically.
Right. I think he's chewed maybe like one hole and two different pillows. But now what we do, and it's genius because it's not like we're gone that long of a time,
Not with you staying
especially
home
with me
now.
being home. So you had installed a gate that blocks off our living room from our kitchen. And that was, for Blair, pretty much. But now what we've done ever since that's been in place, we just pull that shut and it locks Louie into the kitchen, and he doesn't have access to chew on anything. He doesn't chew our shoes, so we don't have to worry about that. He doesn't have his bed, so he can't chew on that. There's no stuffed animals or pillows or anything. And so I come home and he lays on the little kitchen rug and he's never chewed on that.
Yeah, it's worked out really well. The original plan of that gate was to keep Blair out of stuff, but it's worked out really well. And I think you staying home, I mean, he knows he's not getting left for more than 3-4 hours at a time.
Right. And I was nervous bringing Blair into the picture.
That was a big step.
Right. And I had done a ton of research on that because I was like, what's the best way to, get them acquainted? And something I had read was when you as the mom come home from the hospital with your baby, you as the mom should go in first by yourself and let your dog see. I mean, you haven't seen them for a few days. They're excited to see you. They want to see you. So I did that. Louie got to have his couple minutes of alone time with me. And you had brought the blanket home too.
Mm-hmm.
Let him sniff that while we were in the hospital.
That way he's kind of familiar with the new smell.
The sound, yeah, or the sound, the smell. But Louie just kind of sniffed him, I guess, the first few days. And I remember if Blair was crying in his pack and play, Louie would hop up on the bed so he could get a better look at Blair. And like, what are you doing in there?
He was pretty disinterested until Blair started crying.
Right.
And then he was he would look at us and be like, hey, fix that.
Yeah.
And of course, us being first time parents, like, we don't know what we're doing. Sorry.
So yeah, Lou, I mean, really the first couple months, Blair would cry and he'd kind of be like, are you going to do something about that? And then once Blair got mobile, Louie was like, oh, this is a whole new ball game.
Yeah, Louie got on edge, but I never felt uncomfortable like Louie would have bit him.
No.
Or anything like that. I think he
No.
was just on edge because there was a 2-foot human running around the house that hadn't been there before.
Well, even before, even Blair crawling, Louie was just on edge for a couple months because he's like, okay, this thing has screamed and cried for 8 months and now it can move. I mean, he was just kind of like, what do I do? Like,
Right.
this thing's coming towards me. And I had done my research on that. It's, don't ever let the dog feel cornered. We put that gate up. There were a lot of days because we were getting into fall and winter, where, Louie couldn't just sit outside all day like he likes to. I would shut that gate and I would just let Louie lay in his bed in the kitchen by himself. Because I'd read they were like, dogs need to have their own space where they can just go and relax. Because if I had Louie in with me in the living room with Blair, he was on edge. He was sitting up. He was watching Blair. He was, because obviously, Louie doesn't want to do anything to Blair.
No.
He loves him. I mean,
He tolerates him.
I guess. I think they'll be better buds the older Blair gets. But, obviously Louie doesn't want to do anything to him. So I felt like for Louie to be able to truly relax at some points, he needed his own space. So I would let him just lay in the kitchen while Blair and I played in the living room on the other side of the gate. And from the get-go, we're trying to teach Blair how to treat dogs. I was never going to be one of those moms that lets my kid just do whatever they want to the dog and the dog just has to put up with it.
Yeah, and that when I feel like when people do that, it's ridiculous. That dog deserves the respect of not being climbed on, pulled on, hit, teased, whatever. If you're having a dog in your house, it's part of the family. I mean, it's still a dog, it's your pet, but you shouldn't allow children to cause the dog pain or be uncomfortable.
Right. And because it almost just makes me cringe when parents let their kids do that to their own dog. Because I'm like, well, they're not going to be able to differentiate that with someone else's dog.
Right. And with teaching Blair that, now if he sees a dog, he almost has that look like, can I go pet him? Or
Right. He kind of.
he'll hesitate.
Well, but it was funny. So this past summer at that 4 for the 4th race, there was plenty of dogs after the race. Blair wanted to pet all of them. And every time I would say to Blair, I'm like, okay, well, we have to ask, we have to ask if we can pet them. And which that's just, common
You
sense.
should do that anyways.
Right. And so, the owner would be like, oh yeah, sure. It's fine. And I've always taught Blair to just pet Louie like on his back. Like, I'm like, don't grab his face, don't grab his ears, because dogs they don't like that. And so he would just, and I always tell him, like, give Louie nice pats and he'll pat his back. And so that's what he does with every dog now. He doesn't try to grab their face or their ears. He's tried to grab Louie's tail a couple of times, but we tell him, we're like, don't grab his tail.
The key is keeping an eye on him. And I know toddlers are hard to keep an eye on, but if you're going to have a dog around, that's something you have to stay on top of. If it's going to be an issue where you're trying to do something in the kitchen and you don't feel comfortable, let the dog outside or have some sort of a gate. If
Right.
you're not completely comfortable with them being together yet and you can't watch them, separate them somehow.
Because that's what I had to do for a couple months.
Even if you have to put the dog in a bedroom, just for a 15, 20 minutes, half hour, whatever it is, just kind of give them their space.
Yeah. Because for a while when Blair was first starting to learn how to crawl and he got pretty fast at it, Blair didn't know. Like, he would just go right up to Louie. He didn't
Right.
know how to pet him yet or what he should and shouldn't do. And I feel like now he does.
He does now, but when he started crawling, but he's a 9-month-old baby. He doesn't know any better. Louie's new to the situation.
Right. He's still trying to figure it out.
It's up to the parents to say, hey, we got to, kind of monitor this, make sure, everything's fine.
And letting them go outside or a gate. And what I have also read, it's easy to call, like, if your dog's like they're about to be cornered or something by the baby, it's so much easier to call the dog over to you. That's what I did with Louie all the time. Just be like, Louie, come here. And he'd run over to me.
Yeah, he would want to get out of the corner, and when you encouraged it, he'd hop right out. He'd run over to you, and then
everything.
The situation was avoided.
Because Blair, being 9 months old, I don't even think he knew his name yet. He's not going to realize, oh, hey, I'm calling you back. So
he sees something fluffy.
Right. So I think that helps. There's times where Louie's passed out on the floor, and especially when Blair was first learning how to walk, if Blair got close to him, be like, Louie, watch out. And he'd wake up and, oh, okay, there's Blair. Just so, they're not startled or anything.
Yeah, I think that's the only reason, Louie's barked at Blair a couple times. He's never snapped at him, just barked. I think he was scared, just because he might have been asleep or wasn't paying attention. All of a sudden, something's touching his back or whatever. So
right,
it just goes back to effort. It takes effort to do the research on what kind of dog you're wanting to get for your home and your family. It takes effort to get him home and get him comfortable. Walk the perimeter if you don't have a fence.
yeah.
If you have a baby or younger kids, it takes effort to introduce them to each other and make them comfortable with each other. Just to bring a dog home and just let them go, you're probably going to have some issues.
Right. Well, and before we started recording, we talked about that saying, because Malia, the director of the shelter, has shared it on Facebook too. It takes a dog 3 days to decompress from being adopted. Because you think about it, they're just thrown into this new world. They don't know you. They don't know this new house or these new smells. It takes 3 weeks to know your routine, and then 3 months to feel like it's a home for them. Well, you hear about some people, and like I said, within 2 days, they're like, oh, well, they peed on my floor. I don't want that to happen. So I'm taking you back.
Yeah, I know a lot of dogs, especially dogs that are in shelters. They probably do have a lot of issues, but it just goes back to working with them.
Well, that's the prison program. Not only was he trained, he was also socialized
He was just
and
around
different.
someone all the day,
Yeah.
and like I said, not just the training, but he was comfortable with people again. He
Yeah.
had been astray, so he probably wasn't around a lot of people.
Right.
But I commend you on all the work you did, all the research you did, that we were able to get, an adoption dog that moved into our house, and it was pretty, pretty easy overall. But it wasn't luck; it was the fact you had done your research. You found a great shelter that allowed your dogs to go through this prison program. You had researched a dog that kind of fit our lifestyle, who was active but not too high strung. There were no red flags about kids or other dogs, so it's worked out really well. And it just goes back to effort, just putting a little time in. What works best for you? Do you live in an apartment where maybe a smaller dog or more
A couch potato
a
dog.
couch potato dog works, or do you live on 10 acres and you can have a high strung dog that gets to run and be around livestock like that? What works best for you and your family? Just do the research. Don't just say, hey, I want a dog, and go get a dog.
Right.
Because it's not a one-size-fits-all thing.
And don't go for the cute. I mean, from first impressions, Rocco was cuter than Louie, but Rocco wouldn't have worked out at our home.
Right.
So
Right. You got to find what fits for you and your family, your lifestyle, your house situation, your property. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it.
I just want to make a plug for the Animal Protection League.
Absolutely.
They do several fundraisers throughout the year, but something you can do that doesn't take a lot of time, and if you just have extra money sitting around. We don't, but maybe some people do. They have on their website, or you could probably just search for it on Amazon, but they have an Amazon wish list, and it has all the things that the shelter needs and like wants too. I don't think people realize what it takes to run a shelter day to day for how many. I mean, they take in hundreds and hundreds of animals every year.
Yeah. And if you don't have extra cash sitting around, old towels, bleach, peanut butter.
I mean,
blankets.
you could just go and spend like $20, and
You could probably go into a closet.
Right. Old towels, old blankets, a jar of peanut butter.
And if you don't have that,
Oh, and Louie's ears just perked up when I said that.
and if you don't have, extra towels or something, if you have a little extra time and you find it in your heart to go volunteer, go walk a dog.
Go walk the dogs. Go clean out the
It could be the
kennels.
simplest little thing and not cost you a dime.
Right. Go help with their events. I mean, they do so much. And I mean, granted, yes, they get tax dollars and big time donations, but sometimes it's the little donations that add up. We try to donate every year that we've had Louie, we donate at Christmas time.
We donate Christmas time. We try to take supplies over as we can. It's a great program, the Animal Protection League. Malia Stringer is fantastic. Her, just her honesty. She knows that certain dogs aren't going to work in certain houses. She'll be real upfront about how it works. She's an excellent fundraiser. So, and I'm sure there's many shelters like that around your area, wherever you're
Right.
listening.
If you want to donate somewhere more locally,
yeah, but
have at it. But that's just the one that we
the one we
picked
choose,
locally.
and we'll go through again. So, dogs are
And
awesome. What's that?
Nothing against the ASPCA, but if you have money and you want to donate it, try to donate it to a local shelter.
Yeah,
you know exactly where the money is going.
Yeah, we're very pro. I don't care if it's local shelters, restaurants, businesses. Support your local businesses, restaurants, shelters.
Charities.
But no, if you're wanting to get a dog and you're wanting to adopt, it's great. We couldn't be happier with Louie. He's just fit in our family great. But do your homework, do some research, put a little effort into it, and you'll have a much better experience.
Right, Louie?
Yeah, he's passed out.
He only perked up when I said peanut butter.
Jill, cheers to Louie. Like I said, just get out there, do your homework if you're wanting a dog, and your family will be better for it. So cheers.
Make it a great day and sip it.